So, anybody who's everybody in the wrestling world for the past few days, the biggest topic of discussion has been the walkout by Sasha Banks and Naomi. Why did they walk out? Are people siding with them? What was behind the reason for walking out? Is it creative issues? Is it contractual disputes? Is it have something more or deeper than any of that stuff? What's going on, everybody? This is NYG Jeffy T 3285, and I'm back with another WWE update on the ongoing saga that is the walkout by Naomi and Sasha Banks this past Monday Night Raw before the show aired, when they were having some creative disputes with Chairman of WWE and Executive Vice President of Talent Relations, John Laurinaitis, and Vince McMahon, when it came to a storyline that was going to be booked and a match for the main event for Monday Night Raw, which is originally supposed to be a six-pack challenge match to determine who's going to be the number one contender heading into Hell in the Cell to face Bianca Belair for the Raw Women's Championship. The original match was supposed to be Sasha Banks versus Naomi versus Doudrop versus Nikki Ash versus Becky Lynch versus Asuka. But those plans were changed up later in the day when Sasha Banks and Naomi did not believe or agree with the creative discussions that were going on in terms of the outcome of the match. And what ended up happening is both Sasha and Naomi, after having somewhat of an agreement and coming to some type of peaceful resolution with Vince McMahon, Vince McMahon actually was one of the reasons why this whole situation got blown up even worse than it could have been. And then Sasha Banks and Naomi ended up going into John Laurinaitis' office, just laid the tag team belts there, grabbed their stuff, and ended up walking out of the Raw show before it was beginning to air. And since then, Sasha Banks and Naomi haven't really come out and stated their side of the story on what has been going on with this whole situation. Instead, they've pretty much been staying silent the whole time, but more details are starting to come out onto why this happened. And you're seeing a lot of wrestlers and many fans go to the support and getting behind Sasha Banks and Naomi, thinking that they did the right thing in terms of this whole situation, that it was wrong for WWE to do the booking as they did. It made no sense for either one of these two women to be booked into the fashion that they were in that main event, and that there was no actual progression going on after the supposed matches that were going to be booked, where it was originally going to be Sasha Banks would be taking on Ronda Rousey and Naomi would be going against Bianca Belair, where both of them were eventually going to take the loss. And then after that, there was going to be no other progression towards the storylines, and you would just end up splitting up the Raw Tag Team Champion, Women's Tag Team Champions for no reason at all, without any type of progression for that story. Now there is actually more news that have been breaking in the past couple of days, that in fact, both Naomi and Sasha Banks' contracts are set to be expiring within the next couple of months. So that adds another wrinkle to this whole entire story on why Sasha Banks and Naomi might have walked out, because they might have been in some type of negotiations for a new renewal for their deals, but because of the way they've been creatively booked in terms of being the tag team champions, and that they haven't been getting any or enough airtime, and they haven't been booked properly, and going against some very legit women's tag teams, which is lacking right now in that women's division, that Sasha Banks and Naomi just had enough. And they didn't want to deal with the horrendous creative that was going on currently in WWE, so they decided to leave and not put up with it anymore, which you could completely understand, because WWE has been notorious for not only stops and starts and stops and starts and pushes, but as well as just dropping angles completely. And they have been notorious especially with not being able to book tag teams very well, or just giving up on tag teams in general, whether it's the men or the women. They've just never been good when it came to those types of storylines, when it came to booking tag teams, which is why you don't really see many successful tag teams, especially in the women's division, which is severely lacking in legit tag teams right now that could go against Sasha and Naomi in terms of tag team feuds. Now, who really knows what's going to happen in terms of if Sasha Banks and Naomi, that they might eventually right now, currently, as we speak, Sasha and Naomi are not expected to be at SmackDown tonight. They're not scheduled to be on the show at all, and they have actually been taking off the road schedules for up to late June, which could always change later on, but right now they are not scheduled to be on tour with the rest of the WWE superstars up until late June. That's as of PW Insider and Dave Meltzer, Mike Johnston, Brian Alvarez, Sean Ross Sapp, all these guys have reported this. That right now Naomi and Sasha Banks are not expected to be touring with the rest of the superstars up until late June. Plans can always change if they can come to some type of peaceful resolution between these two ladies and the WWE front office. But right now, Sasha Banks and Naomi are currently going into the last couple of months of their contracts, and after this latest thing that happened with the walkout, who really knows how they're going to be featured on TV. And if Sasha Banks and Naomi decide to not come back on TV, what could end up happening is that both of their contracts currently right now could end up being frozen by the WWE. Vince McMahon chooses to go this route, and both Sasha Banks and Naomi would not be able to hit free agency on the original time frame that they were supposed to. So the longer those two end up staying out, if they don't choose to come back, the longer the two of them could actually be on the sidelines going forward and having their contracts frozen for those last couple of months, or maybe for a reason that the WWE and these two ladies can come to an agreement to some type of peaceful resolution, and that they can try to lock up these two, because right now they're the talk of the town in terms of the wrestling landscape. And that could be also big bucks, because anytime you can create any type of controversy, it's always going to be a lot more money for not just the company you work for, but also the individuals that are in the middle of this storm. So right now, Sasha Banks and Naomi, they're in the middle of what is the biggest story right now, not going on just WWE, but in wrestling in general. And this is just only going to help the two of them in terms of, the type of money that they could be making if they get a renewed contract with WWE, or even if they make it to the free agent market and an AEW or Ring of Honor, an Impact, or Stardom, or any of these other companies look to try to bring them in. Most likely AEW, if anything. So WWE is sort of in a very tough spot right now because of the perception that's being put out there. And they're not exactly looking like the good guys right now at all. A lot of people are siding with Naomi and Sasha that they did the right thing, which in some ways I do agree. I do believe that they made the right decision. But I believe it's somewhat unprofessional for you to walk out of your job, because most people would not be able to do that in their current state, to just walk out of your job. Even if you're not liking exactly what you're being booked in, you still have to go about it in a most professional way. And these two, Sasha Banks and Naomi, did not go about it in the most professional way. But I do understand that the creative that they were being put in front of was just not going to be to their best interest. So I can understand why the two of them just didn't want to put up with it anymore. Now, as what might end up happening in this whole situation as it completely unfolds, I think Naomi, because she still is way more liked in the company, and the fact that her husband right now, Jimmy Uso, is in arguably the biggest storyline in wrestling for the past couple of years, being part of the Bloodline. He's the longest, along with his brother Jay, the longest reigning tag team champions in the WWE right now for period, the SmackDown tag team champions, and the fact that she's still very well liked in that company, and that some believe that she was manipulated by Sasha Banks into the walkout. That I think they'll try to find a way to come to some type of resolution with Naomi and try to find a way to extend her contract and bring her back, because of the fact that her whole family still is there. Roman Reigns has always vouched for Naomi, is behind her at all times, because he does believe that this woman is one of the most talented wrestlers in that company, which she is. And at the same time, I think she could be a very, very valuable asset, especially if she's included in the Bloodline storyline, if everything can get smoothed over in the end. Now, in terms of Sasha Banks, this is not the first time that she's had an incident with the WWE. There's been many cases where she's had some issues with WWE in the past when it came to creative decisions. In fact, a few years ago, her and Bayley were the once tag team champions at the time, but they ended up dropping the tag team titles at WrestleMania to the Iconics at the time, and that ended up just driving Sasha Banks over the edge, and she ended up leaving the WWE and just going in a hiatus, because she just didn't want to deal with this anymore because of the bad booking creative that was put in front of her. But the problem with WWE is they could just think about and be like Sasha Banks and Naomi, might not just be worth the trouble anymore, and they could end up just releasing the two of these ladies. But at the same time, does WWE really want to take a chance of allowing somebody like Tony Khan and All Elite Wrestling get their hands on these two, especially Sasha Banks, who is arguably the most talented woman in the entire wrestling landscape right now? And Vince McMahon would be very hard pressed to let arguably the most talented woman just walk out of his company and walk right into the competition and become a big star over there. So you have to think about that aspect as well. As does Vince McMahon really want to take a chance, even though he's having some issues right now with Sasha Banks and Naomi, letting the two of these women just walk out of the company and walk right into the competition? So you have to think about that too. We don't know how this is going to unfold. There's still more details that are going to be coming out as the days go on. But right now, Sasha Banks and Naomi are set to have their contracts expire in the next couple of months. And at this moment, they're both not going to be with the WWE in terms of touring going through June. And they will not be, and they're not expected to be showing up on SmackDown tonight as part of the show. Things could easily get corrected over time. Things could get worse. We really don't know. We just have to let the time and everything play out as it goes on. But that's just my quick little thoughts and updates on the whole Sasha Banks and Naomi story right now going on with the WWE. So if you like this video, please hit the like button on the bottom. Subscribe if you haven't already to NYG Jeffy T 3285 for more breaking news and updates on the WWE and wrestling in general. As well as, please leave a comment below on what you feel about this whole Sasha Banks and Naomi story. Do you think they're the ones in the right? Do you think the WWE is in the right? What do you end up thinking is going to happen with this whole situation? And do you think that Sasha Banks and Naomi are going to be with the WWE long term? Or do you think that they're eventually going to be let go and they're going to be able to go to a new place and sign with another company like an All Elite Wrestling? So please just let me know your comments in the bottom of the section. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Friday afternoon. TGIF, thank God it's Friday, everybody. Make sure to tune in to SmackDown tonight to see what's going to happen in terms of the Bloodline and the rated RK Bro to see who's going to end up winning the Unified Tag Team Championships and what else might happen on SmackDown tonight and for the WWE going forward. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Take it easy and get ready for a nice, great weekend coming up too. Have a good one, everybody. And let's go WWE.